Do you have a weak Wi-Fi signal in parts of your home? If so, you have a couple popular options in terms of extending your Wi-Fi signal. You can go with a Wi-Fi extender, or you can implement a mesh Wi-Fi system for your home network. In today's episode from Network from Home, we're going to be diving into this decision, and I'm going to be explaining for you when you might want to use an extender and when you might want to implement a mesh Wi-Fi solution. Let's start by doing a quick overview of how each of these solutions works. Starting with a Wi-Fi extender, what a Wi-Fi extender does is it connects to your router and it rebroadcasts the Wi-Fi signal that your router is broadcasting. So let's say in this example here, we have a router, we have a modem, and we have a dead zone in our home. This green area represents the Wi-Fi signal that's broadcast from the router. So in order to extend the coverage to that dead zone, what we can do, we implement a Wi-Fi extender. It's taking the Wi-Fi signal that your router's broadcasting and essentially rebroadcasting it. One thing to keep in mind with Wi-Fi extenders is that when they're rebroadcasting the Wi-Fi signal from your router, they do so with a different Wi-Fi network name. The reason this is significant is that you will have to manually connect to these different Wi-Fi networks depending upon where you are in your home. So if you're in this area, if you're in this room, you'll want to connect to this Wi-Fi network. But if you take that device into this room, maybe you want to connect to this Wi-Fi network. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's a little more complicated and it's an extra step to do this with a Wi-Fi extender. Another thing to keep in mind with Wi-Fi extenders, let's say we're in a larger home, Wi-Fi extenders are not recommended to be used for daisy chaining. So what do I mean? Say we have this additional dead zone, we already have an extender in place. It's not recommended to put another Wi-Fi extender here, which is connecting to the Wi-Fi extender's network, which is connecting to the router's network. There's a performance-based reason for that. I'll get into that shortly, but just keep in mind that Wi-Fi extenders are ideal if you only need one in your home network. All right, so how about mesh Wi-Fi systems? Well, to be honest, mesh Wi-Fi systems function pretty similarly to Wi-Fi extenders. Let's say we're in a similar situation. We have a dead zone in our home. What you do, you implement another mesh node. And what happens is these nodes communicate with each other wirelessly. And then these nodes are all broadcasting a Wi-Fi signal in your home. One main difference here between extenders and mesh nodes is that mesh nodes, you can implement as many of them as you want in your home network. So say, again, we're in this larger home, we have this dead zone, whereas you couldn't extend a Wi-Fi extender with daisy chaining, you can with mesh nodes. So what happens here? This node communicates with this node, which communicates with this node, and there's not nearly the performance degradation that you see with extenders. Another difference with mesh Wi-Fi is that all of these nodes are broadcasting the same Wi-Fi network name and password. This makes things really seamless regardless of the location of the device in your home. Whether you're in this main room, or this one, your device will always be connected to the same Wi-Fi network. You won't have to manually change Wi-Fi networks every time you move the device in your home. So when it comes to which solution you should get for your home network, which one should you get? Well, you might be shocked to hear this, but the answer is it depends upon your home network and your individual situation. So let's walk through when you should get an extender and when you should get a mesh Wi-Fi system. So when should you get a Wi-Fi extender? Well, as I mentioned earlier, if you have one Wi-Fi dead zone and you know you only need to extend your Wi-Fi signal to one area, maybe a Wi-Fi extender is a good option. As I talked about before, and I'll go into more detail shortly, Wi-Fi extenders are not meant to be daisy chained together, so that's why they're perfect if you're only going to be implementing one in your home and you have one dead zone that you want to take care of. Also, in general, Wi-Fi extenders are cheaper than mesh nodes, especially if you currently have a standalone router in your home network already. If you were going to implement a mesh Wi-Fi system, you would need a node to replace your standalone router, and then you would need another node to take care of that Wi-Fi dead zone in your home. If you already have that standalone router and you're just taking care of that Wi-Fi dead zone, If you can get away with just getting an extender, it's going to be much cheaper than if you're buying multiple mesh nodes. Also, you might want a mesh Wi-Fi extender if you don't mind switching Wi-Fi networks when you move your device throughout your home. Of course, it might be a better solution if you have a specific area that's a Wi-Fi dead zone of your home and you have devices that are going to be in that area the whole time. You're not going to be moving those devices to the different areas of your home. So one time it will be closer to your router, another time it will be closer to your extender. If you know that it's always going to be connected to your extender, the fact that your extender broadcasts a different Wi-Fi network doesn't really make a difference. Another reason why you might want to get a Wi-Fi extender is if you only have a few devices that need an internet connection in the current Wi-Fi dead zone of your home. As I mentioned, Wi-Fi extenders, they don't get as good a performance as devices connecting directly to your router. So if you have multiple devices that need an internet connection for streaming videos, you might want to go with a different solution. But if you only have one or two devices in your current dead zone, you can probably get away with just using an extender for those devices. I should also mention there's an important asterisk here, because when I talk about these situations with limited performance, I'm referring to your Wi-Fi extender in extender mode. There are actually a couple other modes that it could be operating in where you won't have the same performance degradation, which makes a Wi-Fi extender even more viable of a solution for you in your home. It's worth quickly walking through these three different modes just because it makes a significant difference when it comes to internet performance when you have a device connecting to a Wi-Fi extender. The first mode to talk about here is extender mode. We've already gone over it a little bit, but your extender and your router, they're communicating with each other wirelessly. The reason you don't get as good a performance when connecting to the Wi-Fi extender, in fact, you get about 50% of the bandwidth that you get than if you were to directly connect to your router. The reason for this is that your extender and your router, they're communicating with each other on the same Wi-Fi channels that the rest of your devices are communicating on. So this really makes communication a little more complicated. If you have a lot of devices talking at the same time, having your Wi-Fi extender also communicating with your router, it can just kind of slow things down a little bit. All right, so extender mode has some performance limitations. The next one here that doesn't have the same limitations is an extender in access point mode. With access point mode, the key difference here is that your extender and your router are connected to each other with an Ethernet cable. Because of this connection with an Ethernet cable, the communications between your extender and your router, they happen super quickly and you don't have any delay in those communications. And on top of that, your extender now broadcasts the same Wi-Fi network that your router is when it's in access point mode. As a result of all these factors, connecting to a Wi-Fi extender when it's in access point mode, you can get similar performance than if you were connecting directly to your router. So this is a great option. If you can implement a Wi-Fi extender in your home in access point mode, this makes it a fantastic solution. If you only need one extender, you have a bunch of devices that need to communicate through this extender to your router. Access point mode gives you great performance and you're covering that Wi-Fi dead zone in your home. The best mode of all three of these is if you have your extender in mesh mode. Basically what this creates is it creates a mesh Wi-Fi network with your extender and your router. The key thing here is that your extender and your router need to have the same manufacturer. For example, I previously had a TP-Link router and a TP-Link extender. They both supported what TP-Link calls Easy Mesh mode, and setting them up in Easy Mesh mode, the extender and the router could communicate wirelessly with each other, but the key distinction here, and the difference between it being in extender mode and mesh mode, is that in mesh mode, the extender and the router are communicating on a separate Wi-Fi channel than the one that all of your devices are using to communicate with your extender and your router. So that's why you don't get any performance degradation when it's in mesh mode. And another benefit here is that when it's in mesh mode, if you can implement your router and your extender in this mode, you can add multiple Wi-Fi extenders. It basically creates a mesh Wi-Fi network. In other words, you can implement more than one extender in your home network. So this is a really great argument for Wi-Fi extenders if you're able to do this in your situation, because if instead of buying mesh Wi-Fi nodes to place in the different areas of your home, you can just buy multiple extenders and put them in mesh mode to communicate with your router. It's also worth mentioning that in mesh mode, it's very similar to access point mode. All of these Wi-Fi extenders in mesh mode, they'll be broadcasting the same Wi-Fi signal that your router is. So it really makes a big difference if you can put your extender in access point or mesh mode when it comes to performance. I've previously made videos explaining how to set up your extender in these different modes. I'll include them in the description if you currently have an extender that you want to set up in one of these modes. With all this talk about Wi-Fi extenders, when should you buy a mesh Wi-Fi system? Well, first and foremost, if you have multiple Wi-Fi dead zones in your home, or if you have a Wi-Fi dead zone that's really far away from your router, you can daisy chain the mesh nodes together to provide a Wi-Fi signal to that area. Another situation where a mesh Wi-Fi system might be a good choice for you is if you currently have a standalone router that you're going to be replacing in a year or two anyway. It's a good time you can replace your standalone router with a mesh node, and then you buy as many additional mesh nodes as you need to cover your home with a Wi-Fi signal. Whereas if you have a standalone router, you buy a Wi-Fi extender, and then you have to go and replace that standalone router again in a few years. It really kind of defeats the purpose. You might as well take advantage of the flexibility that mesh nodes provide. This is especially helpful if your internet needs change in the future, if you move to a larger home, you have more people in your home using the internet, you add more devices to your home network. All of these cases, the mesh nodes will cover because you can easily scale up your home network. A short way of saying this is if you know what your internet needs are and they're not going to change in the short term, maybe a Wi-Fi extender is a good fit. But if you're uncertain of what your internet needs are and they might change in the future, a mesh Wi-Fi system provides you with the flexibility to handle that. Another obvious reason where you want to implement a mesh Wi-Fi system is if in the current area where you have a Wi-Fi dead zone in your home, you need or want top internet performance, or you have multiple devices that need to connect to the internet, and you can't implement an extender in access point or easy mesh mode. And lastly, if you want a seamless and effortless internet experience in your home, you can't go wrong with a mesh Wi-Fi system. All of the nodes are broadcasting the same Wi-Fi network name and password, so regardless of where you are in your home, regardless of what device you're using, you know you're going to get good internet performance. Especially because with a mesh Wi-Fi system, your devices will automatically connect to the node that provides it with the strongest Wi-Fi signal. Strong Wi-Fi signal equals strong performance. There's nothing you have to do and nothing you have to worry about. I'd love to see in the comments section which solution you went with in your home network, and I'd also like to hear about the performance or experience you have using either a mesh Wi-Fi system or that Wi-Fi extender. As always, thanks for checking out this episode from Network from Home, and we'll catch you on the next one.